how did we go from a point where Kyrie Irving was saying, if you'll have me, I intend to re-sign and all that, to roughly 8 weeks later, talking with Spencer Dinwiddie, and it's going to be crazy in New York. I mean, how did we go in 2 months' time from I want to be here to I'm out the door. And to me, like, I read this, and of course I'm uh, someone who still took Kyrie at his word, and through that, and really believed that there was a lot of stuff that was conspiring in the media. Members of our own CLNS family, I guess, really, going after Kyrie, I think, in a way that I think was not reasonable for what he had done. Now, obviously, the playoffs went the way they did. But look, I mean, I think the question to me remains, and I'm glad Forsberg kind of put it before us, is like, how do you make that move? How do you go from telling a packed house at the TD Garden, I'm going to stay, to privately telling your buddies, hey, I'm going to go to New York? I mean, I walked away with this feeling. A couple things. One, Kyrie is duplicitous. Kyrie is the fact that he's willing to walk away from a public pronouncement like that so easily shows that he did not have the heart, did not have the fire, did not have the gut, did not have the chutzpah to really be a leader and to be the person who you could rally around and build a franchise around. So that's one. That's one takeaway. My other takeaway is this: Kyrie's frustration was with Danny Ainge and with Brad Stevens. And it's about the young guys, of course. Now, what does that really mean? To me, the young guys thing is, and putting Danny really primary in this, and some comments that were made about wanting a 13-year vet. Seems pretty clear to me he wanted players gone, a player or players gone. And I actually start not with Brown, but with Terry Rozier. I think Terry Rozier, universally, everyone saw Terry Rozier as a guy who was really out for his. And his comments, even after the season, seemed to indicate that never stopped. He always thought he was a starter, which is great in some capacity, but not so great in others. So, in other words, I would say Kyrie Irving was not unlike many Celtics fans, the vast majority of Celtics fans on Twitter, who were saying, why is Brad playing Terry Rozier? Get him out of there and get him gone from Boston entirely. So Kyrie was just like everybody else. Kyrie saw the same faults that we saw. So that to me says, okay, well, I get that. I get the frustration, the difficulties. I get all those things. What I can't get past is number one, which is the guy still wanted to walk out in 8 weeks after publicly saying he wanted to stay. Not willing to see it through, not willing to try to build this thing, not willing to see past the fact that in May, Terry Rozier is gone and never coming back here. And if Jalen would have been in that package for Anthony Davis, but it never happened because, of course, Kyrie mentally.
I think he wanted something done during the season period, the end, to show that there was a commitment beyond this season. And I think he wanted to see what would potentially happen in the postseason with veterans. And I think he also realized that he needed pressure taken off of him. And he wasn't sure if he was going to get pressure taken off of him, in this current model. But at the same time, the way he reacted to that, not to build up other players around him, and kind of stick with the plan because of the pressure that was coming from the media. I think that's why the media continued to pigpile. I feel like that was the mistake. Was he was letting it get to him. It was bothering him, the wins and losses, and he didn't have. I know you said a chutzpah, but I just don't think he had the fortitude to fight through that. I think he broke easy, and if you're really looking at this honestly, every season until he came to the Celtics was an easy season except for year one because he had somebody else taking that pressure off of him. It's not to say that he's not a great talent. It's not to say that there wasn't still trials and tribulations. And there definitely doesn't mean that there wasn't conflict in the locker room because that relationship with LeBron and some of the headbutting is fairly well documented as well. But at the end of the day, I think he's had easier seasons. Now, because of the whole knee thing with the Celtics last season, it was probably easy for him to recover from that. But coming back with the expectations for this year, not meeting those, and having that pressure levied on him instead of LeBron, I think he broke. I think he
Yeah,
broke.
he did.
And he pointed the finger, and I think that's the real issue culturally with him as a leader. That's the issue in the locker room. Instead of leading out of that, he began to point the finger too. He pointed it at the young guys. And my point is, this is where he went wrong with the media. Like, you can go
Hmm.
and you can make the criticism of the media, but he blew it and he was never going to make it in Boston if he couldn't handle, like you said, 8 weeks of the Boston media without pointing the finger at everybody else around him as the problem.
Well, yeah.
And even then, and I will say one other thing, and the media saw through this. Even when he took it on his shoulders, it really did not sound sincere.
No, and he went, and I'd also to agree with that. He went another 2 months really before he was asked a single cross question from the Boston media. They gave him latitude upon latitude upon latitude. They did not question him. They did not challenge him. They did not. They weren't playing in the games that everyone else was playing in. They were giving him space. They weren't asking him about his future. You know, and so I have difficulty with the fact that when those questions did come up, he really lashed out locally more so than he lashed nationally, which I think was really poor taste. But
Well, he needs
I
those national look. He needs those national relationships, and it's the same reason we hear from Chris Forsberg, who, by the way, just had a killer week, right? But he's talking about how, or he tweeted out that Kyrie had texted Wick Grousbeck, and Wick had, but that's because Kyrie is a businessman. And so he knows where his bread is buttered. And even though he'll probably, well, not probably, he'll never play for the Celtics again. But
safe to say,
at the same time, Wick is a businessman and there's a bigger picture there. And so not attacking the national media in that situation is something that he needed to do, because if he ever changed location, he didn't need them continuing to come after him and chase him down. The
yeah.
Boston media is local, so he
But
can lash out and take something that maybe he was frustrated with the national media with. He could take that out locally, especially once he knows he's moving on. And then, does it really come back and hurt him? Yeah, maybe a couple of games in Boston, and Steve Wilpat on the road and Mark Murphy on the road and some of these guys on the road. They're not gonna be going up to Kyrie and busting him on the road.
yeah, but I don't think that that's the issue. I think I yes, but I think I mean, you're right. It's a local problem, but his conduct, it went far beyond the fact that he got mad at Steve Pett for trying to help him put out the put out the water, pour water on the whole KD conversation video. It goes beyond that because it puts him, the whole scenario and his whole conduct towards the end has put such a pallor over his stardom. I mean, I really think talent, yes, but I don't think he's going to walk away from this season in the Celtics and be viewed the same way from the NBA community. I think he's going to be looked like as the type of guy who runs people out of town, who blows up, who's a culture nightmare, who won't be willingly welcomed to places. He's going to have to find a way to rescue his, I think, his Q rating and his view nationally in Brooklyn. He's going to really have to work overtime to do that because he killed his image. He really hurt it. Really poor in such an unbelievable way. That performance against Milwaukee is among the worst performances I've ever seen. And you can say whether he meant to do it or didn't mean to do it or what have you. That was a guy who mentally cracked under the pressure of where he was and what was happening.
Yeah, from a
And
lack of desire of being there.
maybe, sure, probably, whatever the reason, it was a mental. It's not because he didn't have the skills. It wasn't because he was incapable. It's because mentally he couldn't do it. He couldn't will his body to do anything for this team and put them on his back. Just didn't have it. And in the end, Boston's better for it, I think. better to be apart from that situation. And we may even ultimately say that it was better for them to not have brought in, players and stars around him and eventually traded him away.